Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode freaking 42 of Rocket Lab Weekly. We are 10 episodes away from 1 year of doing this show every freaking week nonstop. And we have an OG here with us, Matt Money. I think you have I think you're on like 70% of the episodes or something.
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a topic I love talking about, and I appreciate you always inviting me. It's fun. It's a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
I appreciate you coming. So how was your week this week?
Good. It was humbling, which is always a good thing. I think a lot of people are kind of running around with their head chopped off. It's always nice to see a little retracement in the portfolio, and it's also for me. I write a lot of covered calls, and because the portfolio has been on such a run since October of last year, there's a couple things that have really just like gotten out of control in terms of covered calls. So I've been rolling them for like the past month. So like the SP 500 being one, TQQQ being another, even Palantir to an extent. So it's nice to get a little bit of breathing room, and it's almost like your portfolio doesn't actually end up taking a hit because your covered calls end up becoming, more profitable, right? And so it's like the stock will come down, but your covered calls really kind of buffer that. So it's like you don't even lose money. So it's kind of fun. So believe it or not, like even though the portfolio has pulled back for probably a lot of people, it's only really pulled back like 20 grand for me or something. Let me see. It's not a lot. I was surprised.
That's very nice.
That was a lie. That was a lie. 40 grand. But either
I was gonna say I was getting 20 grand a day. Not
yeah. So I've been fortunate this whole time. So
yeah, but I also think that this pullback is very, very healthy, and we still didn't get one on Palantir. It's nuts how much momentum that stock has. And to be honest, on Rocket Lab, I had like a theory of how we will go, and it's like playing out exactly as I thought that it would. Like we went very close to 6, and then we needed a nice healthy pullback so we can march on again up to the sevens and 8s, and then I want to write some very careful, very out of the money cover calls.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I think it'll be interesting. The premiums have gotten juicy again, which is nice. So even if you're getting far away, it's just for me, I'm at like 28.50, I think, are my covered calls. So I'm just gonna play it, week by week, and hopefully
you mean
it doesn't keep
Palantir now, no? Or
yeah, because I think I was starting to write back when it was like $24. I was writing 25.50 or $26, so that it really just started taking off. And it's up, I forget, a massive amount, 20 or 30% in a month or something like that. And so I've kind of got caught with my pants down, but the premiums are there, so it'll burn, and I'm sure I'll end up being fine in the long run. So
yeah, me too. Cool. So let's get going with the Rocket Lab news this week. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on certain things, and it's always exciting to go over Rocket Lab news. So let's start with the first one. And that is the launch which was supposed to actually be today, got moved up by Capella Space. And I actually wrote a tweet that while this is very, very annoying, this is actually a strength for Rocket Lab, and this is what Rocket Lab is offering. Had this have been a rideshare mission with SpaceX, then the company would have two very bad choices. One is to just rush the asset out on the rocket without doing additional testing and risking losing the asset, or canceling the ride, which I'm pretty sure they can't do at this point. So they would have to just like still pay for the launch, and the rocket would fly without them. And then they would have to wait 2 years for the next rideshare mission. So I think that this is a huge strength for Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab, as Peter Beck said in our interview, gets 90% of the launch paid up front. It's just they can't recognize it in their bookkeeping. So yeah, this is my opinion on it. But what did you think when you saw this one?
I think it's okay. I mean, the only thing I have to say is that there's an even better if. And I deal a lot with scheduling. I deal a lot with engineering and schedules, and so I get it. It's not always as simple as just swapping something in. But I think what would be even better is if they had the opportunity to move Synspective to today, right? And having that ability to have that next launch today. So even if, say, Capella wasn't ready, that's fine, and you would have been able to have Synspective. So I think that there's still room to get slightly better, that every launch window that goes through for Rocket Lab should have two partners kind of ready for it, right? So like it's almost like you almost have the Synspectives of the world being like, okay, Capella, this is your slot, but Synspective, we need you to be ready by X date, right? And same thing with whenever they have this Synspective, right? They have, whomever. So that way you're always launching a rocket if the weather is available and the weather is favorable. And I think that's what, to me, an even better if situation is. I know that's hard to do. We have that problem as well in the oil and gas industry. So I'm not saying like it's easy, but anyway, as long as they're having safe launches at the end of the day, I guess that's what's most important. But you're unfortunately not realizing that revenue. But you said it, fairly, is that they're still able to kind of get it on their books. So
yeah. It's actually a very good idea, and we should ask Peter next time he comes why they don't do this, because he did mention that each rocket is made for a customer, right? And then I wonder if there is certain specifications to a rocket which doesn't allow you to like flip between customers. I don't know if that is the case, because theoretically, like you have the first stage of the rocket, right? And then on the second stage of the rocket, like maybe the satellite adapter or whatever it's called, like the one that you fix the payload to, that's logical to me, that's unique or fairly unique to, each satellite, because, maybe you're launching 3 satellites or 5 or 1 or, yeah. But that should be relatively easy to swap out, because the first stage should still be the same. But we should definitely ask.
I have a backlog of stuff I've been thinking about, and same thing with the Archimedes question. If you could retrofit an Electron with an Archimedes, but that's obviously after you get it Archimedes ready for Neutron, right? Neutron's obviously the big piece. I'm just looking for small efficiencies anywhere I can. That's an engineer, right? It's what I like to do. I like to streamline things. They only have to worry about 2 different fuels rather than 3 different fuels, and all that sort of stuff. But we've talked about that off and on.
Yeah. You know what? I'll actually write to Rocket Lab after this and ask if we're getting a new interview with Peter.
Good question, because we're only a couple weeks away at this point.
Yeah. So cool. Then the next thing is Scotto actually gave an overview of the next launches, what we can expect in Q3. Obviously, they can completely change this in the earnings call, which is coming. But right now, it looks like we have Synspective 5, which looks like it's early August. Then we have Black Sky 7, which is late August. And there is this Kinesis 2, which is September 2024. And that's it. So it looks like we will have only 3 launches, unless something gets bumped up. What are your thoughts about this? Where do you think the launch section is going? I mean, 3 launches would put us in Q3, then we would be 4 plus 3. That's 11 launches, very far short of the 22 target that we had.
Yeah, and it goes back to just being prepared. I mean, I'm very curious of how much of it is partner versus how much of it is Rocket Lab, and we always ask this question, and it always comes back as it's our partners, it's not Rocket Lab, and it's sad to hear, and it gets back to like trying to really get people to back to what I was kind of saying. It's like you need to have some sort of reliability, because here we are, we're forecasting it as a public business to try to get that reliability out. And I recognize, you can't always rely on your partners and everything like that. But if you say 22, people are going to take 22, multiply it by the $8 per launch, kind of reference case, and say, all right, well, you're going to make 160 million to $200 million in launch this year. What's the deal with that, right? How much margin can you make on that? And then people are going to try to forecast off of that. But then if you fall short of, getting only to 15 by year end, you're off by 25-30% in that case, and that ends up having a drag on the performance as well as just the predictability, right? I mean, people say, well, what happens when they forecast 25 launches in 2025? And should we put a 25%, 30% drag on that number as well? So it just gets you to think a little bit. And but anyway, going back to this, I mean, I'm excited to see Black Sky 7 launch, because I think that's the last of the Black Skies that I see in the cadence. And with that, hopefully we'll be able to get a nice contract like we just had for Synspective come out, which was like an $80 million potentially deal. So hopefully with Black Sky. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to Black Sky's earnings report in general. They were EBITDA positive for the last 2 quarters, and they're a $160-180 million company. I think that it actually wouldn't be a bad fit for acquiring, a bolt-on sort of company like Black Sky into Rocket Lab's remit as something that could potentially be utilized and as a decent growth trajectory. I think there's probably a lot of synergies if you think about it. If instead of paying Rocket Lab to launch, if they're paying themselves, right, there's a lot of cost efficiencies and synergies that could be done with that, and you end up being able to potentially launch 2 more satellites for the price of 1, right? Because you're getting 50% gross margin per launch. You're going to be able to launch 2 for the price of 1 for Rocket Lab to be able to capture that revenue stream and be able to bolt on $100 million in revenue instantaneously whenever you buy the company, if you were to buy the company. So I'm kind of curious if that's a company that they're potentially looking at going after. And of course, they're a pretty comparable competitor to Planet Lab, and Planet Lab's a $600 million company, and there's a few other companies out there as well that are kind of in this realm. And so I'm kind of curious if with that, you have a defense piece of it, you have a commercial piece with it, you have an international government piece of it in terms of the revenue and what you're providing to people. So anyway, I went off on a tangent. You asked about the 3 satellite launches, and I went down Black Sky talk, but I've just been thinking about it from a potential investment perspective.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, this is like a Rocket Lab show, but also sort of a space industry show. So yeah, it's good to talk about other companies too. Yeah, and I also wonder if the schedule uncertainty would go away when they manufacture more and more of their own satellites, like meaning that
True.
Yeah. Like if the customers, which one was the last mission? This Victus Hayes, I think, where the government like ordered like the satellite, the development, and the launch from Rocket Lab, because then you like control everything in-house. Because I totally buy that if the customers don't show up, then you can't launch. Like, what are you gonna do? And it's
a good point. Like, I think that's a good point. I haven't even thought about that, Vince. I think that's a brilliant point to bring up. I mean, if you have a backlog of say 2 or 3 of these satellites, and there's 4 or 5 different designs, right? So you have 10 satellites. I mean, if you have that backlog, that's like, okay, well, if you're getting it designed end to end, right, and you don't have somebody that has a specialized sort of satellite they want to put up, then yeah, that would definitely help with reliability. It's really smart. I never thought about that.
All right. So now we go to a very interesting one. There has been not 1, but 2 freaking documentaries that came out about Rocket Lab, and none of them was Rocket Lab specific. The first one is... Oh no, I went to the... Did I? No, I went to the correct one. Yeah. Fortitude on Apple TV Plus. Is there anybody in the chat who has seen this one or the other one, the Wild Space one? And Matt, did you see any of these 2?
No, I was stuck at work late on Thursday, but I did have some good conversations with friends and coworkers on Friday about it. So, and I've seen a few clips as well. So I feel like I probably have seen 20% of the movie at this point, just through looking at people's clips. Like Scott O posted a bunch of clips, and I watched a few of those. And um, but what I've heard, and I don't know about Fortitude, but what I've heard is that, and this is what I predicted when before the movie even came out, that Rocket Lab shows up in bright, shining colors in Wild Wild West, or sorry, Wild Wild Space, and everyone else kind of shows up as a used car salesman. Most specifically, people talked about Chris Kemp, but that's hearsay, and obviously I haven't seen it myself, so I can't say with certainty about that, but that's how I've always kind of felt about Astra. It always felt like smoke and mirrors a little bit. But anyway, you watched Fortitude. I'm curious your thoughts.
Don't watch it. Exactly exactly as Francisco Ramirez said. I don't know what went wrong. Like for me, it was one very, very slow paced. I had to put it like I was not able to pay attention. I had to put it to like two times the speed.
Oh wow.
And it's like somehow jumping around too much. Like it doesn't have like a common thread, and then the guy is just like going from company to company to company, and then every company has like a few minutes but it's like not enough to really understand what they're saying. So yeah, at the end I was like, what the heck did I watch? But definitely the Wild Wild Space was fantastic. I loved it. I'm very curious what the audience thought. I was a little bit, I don't want to say disappointed, but it, like for me, it was like not enough Rocket Lab in it. And I kind of understand that, like Rocket Lab seems to be this company where like everything just goes right? And then if you're like trying to make a movie, it's like, it's kind of boring that it's like, we're going to make a rocket. Okay, we made a rocket. We're going to launch it. Okay, we launched it. We're going to get customers. Okay, we got a bunch of customers, and so that's one. And then number two is obviously like Ashley Vance is from California, and Astra is in California, and I guess like he was able to spend, like it was way easier for him to go over to Astra and film there than it was to go over to New Zealand and film there. And there was a lot of drama in like at Astra. I have to say one thing though, like I read the book, right? And I got an opinion about Chris Camp that he's, like not a very favorable opinion. And I watched this film, and I must say, like I how do you call it? Like, I mean, the guy is persistent. Like, it's not like, because you can get this idea that he's like trying to trick people and he's a fraud, but he's like actually trying to make it go right. And the film is really showing like the suffering that he goes through, and he just keeps standing up after the punches. And like I did get some respect for him. I was like, damn, this guy like does not give up. And obviously he's doing something's wrong, and I mean the product is not there, and I really don't know how they're going to come back from the hole that they went into, because I think they're the only rocket company where you launch and then it's like insanely, because it's kind of expected that you try to launch and you have a few failures on the way, right? But they like came to the point that they launched and it all went good, and they put satellites into the orbit, and then all the other rocket companies that I know, they're like quite good after, it's like, okay, we got this, and then it becomes routine launches, with a few failures here and there. But with Astra, it's like failure. Okay, good, we made it to orbit, and then failure. And like, how do you come back from that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need like 150 launches to have your reliability like back in even in the 90 percentile, which is very, very low for, yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I was describing this, just being an observer of kind of the small launch space over the past few years. And I've looked at it almost as like Chris Kemp is all show, no go in some respects. And it's like I feel like he's putting so much emphasis on marketing the company and trying to get people on board and investors and all that, rather than actually focusing on the detailed engineering and the quality of putting something into space. And so it's almost like, I don't want to say they were rushing, but it felt like they hadn't taken their time to actually dot their I's and cross their T's before they're actually trying to get some of these things into space. And so versus the exact opposite with Peter, and Peter makes it seem so effortless that maybe it just gives off the wrong impression. But he's been doing it, now since the early 2000s, mid 2000s, with all the different things that he's been trying to do. But with Electron since 2017, and I don't know, it's hard to put into words. It's like, I just wish that at the end of the day, I think people expect so much out of people like Chris, but they almost assume that everything's going to go okay with somebody like Peter. And it's so interesting, like, why people will put so much trust into, say, an Astra, but they won't do the same for a Rocket Lab. And it's very interesting. And I can't quite put my finger on it.
I mean, it must be that to have a successful company, you need to be a good salesperson and you need to have good products, right? And then it's like Camp was a good salesperson. He didn't have the product. And it's like Peter is a New Zealand salesperson, which is very different from the like the Silicon Valley, like, look at me, I'm gonna do this. He's more like, as STFU, just watch me do it. And then he does it, and then you have to put it together. You have to be a smart investor, I think, to see it in Peter. I tell you something that's very interesting that again gives me an empathy for Chris Camp. And I came to this after seeing the film, what Connor commented. I like Chris Camp, but I don't want to give him my money. That I came to the same exact thing, because I have a real estate company and we have to close investors also. And we were growing, and like the first investors, they were like people that we knew or people that knew people that we knew, right? And then we made this presentation that was like, very focused on the risk. And we had like, okay, scenario one, the bearish scenario, and then the neutral scenario, and then the bullish scenario of, like if everything goes right in the project, like what is the financial outcome if everything goes wrong? And we were talking about the risk. And then when we grew to a certain size, we needed to get a consultant to work over the presentation so that it would be presented to professional investors. And he looked at the presentation and he's like, what are you guys doing? And we're like, what do you mean? And he's like, everybody knows that what you're presenting in the presentation, like you don't know what the outcome is going to be. Like just write the number, what you think is going to be. And it's the investors' due diligence. And they're all going to do their own calculation of like, it can go worse and it can go better, right? And it was such an interesting viewpoint, because he was saying like, just try to sell to the investors, and the investors need to do their due diligence, right? And I feel that Chris Camp is like, I don't feel he did anything illegal. He was like, yeah, we're going to make a rocket company. And yes, if it could have worked, right? Like the only thing, like he was very close. Like he got in the money, he built a factory. They even had a rocket that reached orbit. So it's just, he never managed to seal the deal, get it to the very end.
The thing that I think that I observed that Astra did more so was they were so focused on the assembly line and trying to make things so efficient, so like before they even had like a successful, efficient rocket. right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I get it. You want to build an assembly line, you want to get efficiencies down. Like if you ever watch their walkthrough or their warehouse, it's actually really well done. And they actually thought about every single step of the way. But it's like, I get that. That's awesome. But you can't even get the rockets consistently into space, right? So it's like, I get it. But it's like me trying to build an assembly line if I want to build a car. It's like, well, you kind of need to build the car first and see if it works and get it approved, the concept approved, and then you can kind of build the assembly line thereafter. Versus what they kind of did, which was they always built the entire way of like getting everything well done. And so it's like, had they been successful, I'm sure they would have done it very cost effectively, and maybe that's still the case, right? Because I mean, they're not shutting down per se, but it's just like, it's almost focusing on putting the cart before the horse, and unfortunately, just like didn't end up following through because of just the way that the industry is. Anyway.
No, I completely agree with you. And that basically burnt up all. I mean, they had okay, I'm not sure I remember the number correctly, but they IPO'd, right? Like they got in a huge sum of money into the company, and they had all that money to develop the rocket, and they somehow blew through all that money, and there was not a reliable rocket. Can't the number be that they got 500 or 600 million from the IPO?
I don't remember, man.
But it's a huge sum, right? Like Electron was developed from, what is it, like $90 million? And Electron is charging 8 million per flight, and Astra's stated goal was to charge 3 million per flight. So it was also like super much money to develop. And then there's not like the business plan on the other end is like you need so many freaking launches to recoup what you have. It just didn't work all around.
Yeah. So if anybody was curious, I just posted in the chat, like it's it's an hour and 10-minute long factory tour, and you're just sitting there and you're just like, oh my God, like this is beautiful factory. But it's like, that's great. Like it would be more what I expect a Rocket Lab factory to look like after their 50th launch than, a company that's, really under 10 launches. And, so it felt like the money was going to the wrong place. And anyway, different story for a different day.
Yeah, here, 500 million proceeds from the IPO. So, yeah. And that's they had financing before to develop the rocket. So it's pretty freaking crazy the amount of money they blew through. Okay, next news. By the way, in the comments, I'm just very interested. What did you guys think about the HBO documentary? Did you guys like it? Did you hate it? Just let me know in the comments what you guys thought. So the next piece of news is Rocket Lab posted this picture, which is, by the way, exactly what we were talking about, how many launches are going to be this quarter. They have 2 HASTE rockets lined up. And again, we know from Peter Beck that they don't produce a rocket that is not meant for a customer. So they wouldn't just be randomly making HASTE rockets. But we don't have launch dates either. So what did you think when you saw this photo? And do you think there is going to be 2 HASTE launches in the near future?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, we know the secretive nature of these HASTE launches, right? And I don't think they want a lot of people and a lot of publicity around them. So I would not be surprised if it just says, okay, we're going to do a HASTE launch, within the next month. You don't get a date. There's at least if I remember the one that they did from Wallops last year, there was no live stream. It was basically like, hey, here's a picture of the long stream that it had, but you didn't get the opportunity to actually watch it. And I anticipate it's going to be very similar. And then, that's okay to an extent because they are paying a little bit extra for the secrecy of these things. So curious to see what ends up when they end up getting launched, if it's Q3 or Q4.
It seems to be a German viewer here who says there is no HBO in Germany. I think they changed the name to Max in Europe. So if you try to search for Max and not HBO, and very likely, even if you download the app and subscribe to Max, it will. Let me see if I can show you what it looks like. But very likely you will not have it. Still, and what you need to do is you need to buy a VPN that basically puts you. It makes it so you are sort of in the US, and then you get access to the US content. This is what the app or what HBO or whatever looks like. And I think that you will have this in Germany. I will be surprised if you don't. And even if I think with the VPN, even if you don't have Max in Germany, you will get access to the US App Store, and then you can download Max from the US App Store, and then you will be able to watch it. Yeah, he just commented that it's not there in Germany. Yeah, you need to use the VPN, and then it will be fine. That's how I had to also watch it. Cool. Moving on to next Rocket Lab news. This one is sort of a weird news. It's still the CHIPS Act funding. And if you guys remember last time when this was announced, it was like a memorandum of understanding, where a lot of details can change. And this week, the congressional leaders did a factory tour to celebrate the pre-agreement. So I guess it's not yet an agreement, but it's getting closer. And I'm not so good on the numbers on this one. What I understand, that's Adam Spice there. What I understand is Rocket Lab bought Solero for 50 million or 100 million. Was it, Matt? You're very good on these numbers.
I don't know. I'll find out.
Yeah. And now they're getting back $24 million. They have gotten huge orders. They're expanding the factory. So it was an insanely fantastic deal for Rocket Lab. But yeah, Matt, what do you think about this announcement?
$80 million cash. I think it's good. I think that there hasn't been a lot of emphasis, I think, on the superiority of Solero in the industry, and so to get a little bit of love from the New Mexico and in the U.S. Chips and Science Act, I think, is really useful. And I think hopefully people get more and more understanding that Solero is a great business for Rocket Lab and will continue to be at the foundation of the end-to-end space nature of Rocket Lab. And yeah, I think that's all I really have to say. I mean, I've always been extremely bullish on Solero ever since they announced it, and in the one investor deck, once they kind of said, "Hey, we're going public, and this is what we're using the funds for." Originally, I was kind of like, what happened to launch? Rocket Lab is launch, and after I kind of got my head on straight, recognized that these are actually really quality businesses, and I started doing research. I've always been very impressed with Solero, and the fact that now in retrospect they only bought it for $80 million is really impressive. Noting the IP alone should probably be worth in the hundreds of millions, in my opinion. But here we are. We're in a very different space age than we are.
How the F did they get such a good deal in was it in 2020 or 2021 when they bought it?
December 2021 was when they announced it. And then I think it closed in 2022. And I think really what it is like you have, and I think Adam said this really well, and even Peter might have said this really well. You have these great people that are operating out of shops with like 4 or 5 people. And so they have great IP. They've worked on it. They've been able to get it up and running, but they just don't have the numbers to actually justify. And so you think about it, it's like what you're really paying for at that point is the IP. You're not really paying for
and the heritage, I guess.
exactly, and you're not really. So it's like $80 million to 4 or 5 people. That's a lot of money. So it's not like you're buying these massive, giant businesses that have been built over the past 100 years. I think a lot of it's just these mom and pops, and so I think that really that's the only reason why. And same thing with the wheels and the star trackers too, right? It's like you weren't able to get the amount of people out or the amount of orders out that you actually wanted, right? You were like closing the books in August, or you're closing the books in July to be able to make sure that you're able to deliver for the following year. And it's like,
yeah.
So that's not an efficient way to run the business. So they picked it up and they made it more efficient and used some of their capital to streamline the business. And I think that part of that is what you're observing here. And I think it's done wonders for the company.
Yeah. Johnny Mack is writing, if there's anyone who works at Rocket Lab that's listening, rumor has it potential clients as well as shareholders are not getting email responses from you guys. Is that true? I really don't know if it is, because Miss Iglesias posted that she got an answer to a question that she was asking Rocket Lab, answered by Adam Spice. So I don't know if that is true, but for the transparency and community's sake, I posted your question so we can see if it is true or not.
What do you think about what's going on in New Mexico with this?
I mean, I think it's brilliant. Like they paid 80 million for a business where they're getting 23 million in subsidies, and that's just, as far as I understand, that's just the New Mexico subsidy. And then there is another subsidy that is going to come from the federal government. So I'm amazed how it's this deal that like it keeps getting better. Like the more you go into the future, you see like how great deal they. It's like Zuck buying Instagram. You were like, what the heck? He's paying $1 billion for that little company, and then as time goes, you see like that was one of the most brilliant acquisitions of all time.
Yeah. Some of these things initially they look like, what the hell are we throwing money away for? But in reality,
because when you describe it like paying 80 million for a 4 or 5 person shop, you're like, what the heck are you guys doing? But it's true that even if Rocket Lab would want to like not pay the 80 million, just in-house and buy solar cell making machines, it's like everybody's going to distrust them, because like the Solero machines, they're, as far as I understand, they're on JWST. They were on, can that be correct? This is before my time with Rocket. Like there is Rocket Lab on JWST, but I'm not sure if it's the solar panels or something else. And like the Solero has been on so many freaking missions that it brings this humongous trust and I guess customer roster, and that's where the 80 million went to. But then they brilliantly scaled it up so that now it's like, oh my god, they got it so cheap.
Yeah, I do want to adjust. I mean, there's a lot of information on this initially, but they started Solero in 1998, headquartered in Albuquerque. Solero solar cells, solar panels, and composite structural products have supported more than 1,000 at that point successful space missions with 100% reliability and mission success to date. Over the past 2 decades, Solero's products have played key roles in some of the industry's most ambitious space missions, blah, 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 blah. The one thing that I wanted to note was Solero technology has made commercial constellations possible, providing power to the OneWeb's broadband constellation. Solero has been selected to supply solar power module, for the power and propulsion elements of the NASA's Gateway, as well as part of the Artemis lunar exploration plans. Key notes there. And also to help enable future missions to Mars. So you're basically buying into that pipeline for NASA. So I said 4 to 5 people. It actually is 425 people. So change the 2 to 425, which actually is pretty interesting. The addition of Solaro's 425 strong team then at that point brought Rocket Lab's total headcount to over 1,000 across its manufacturing complexes. So
How
pretty.
the heck did they get such a good deal on this
Now that it's like 425 people, I'm just like, I don't understand. None of the I
and
guarantee
in the biggest stock market bubble ever, they get this like unbelievable discounted. Maybe this Doug Sinclair, who was the CEO, like maybe he just wanted to retire, and then he was like, "Thank God somebody's taking over the business." Okay.
Yeah. You're paying, even if you're like, if you're buying the employees and their output at that point, it's $188,000 a person.
Yeah.
So it's like, what are you paying for at that point? Like are these people only making like 50 grand a year? I don't know.
Yeah, Spice said they were running it very poorly. Yeah, maybe that's how they got this deal. That maybe they were not profitable or barely profitable, and yeah, I mean, whatever. Let's just be happy that it was a very good deal.
Maybe, yeah, who knows? Maybe they were being subsidized by NASA, like, and that's the only way that they were being kept alive was the subsidies that they were getting from NASA to stay open.
Yeah, I write it up. Next question to Peter Beck. How the F did you get that deal on Solero?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah. So we move over to the next one. So Peter Beck posted, the engine development often steals the limelight, but it's just one element of a huge system. Everyone forgets just how much infrastructure and concrete needs to go into the ground to make a high cadence rocket program successful. Not as exciting as fire, but just as fundamental. So I get the point of this tweet, but what are we looking at on this picture? I see two towers. I don't really see I see fog. I don't and is this concrete that is by the blue tower, or is it like, because for me it looks like, when you prepare, when you dig up a ground, but it's just waiting for concrete. So I let you take this away, or anyone who is watching, if you want to comment on this one. When I saw this picture, I'm like, I get his point, but what are we looking at?
Yeah, I'm trying to see it as well.
Okay, good. I'm not alone on this one. Maybe all this. Do you see my mouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, like maybe all this is just new. And maybe this, but it looks like this is not concreted. It's just dug up.
Yeah.
No? This looks like concrete here. It's this dark.
That does, and then I don't know. It might be the cement, like right above the white tower. The pad is behind the black tower, but that looks like earth.
Yeah, like this is the pad. Yeah, but it doesn't, like, look, this is a road, right? Like this looks like it's concreted. But it's funny because the road here, it changes color if you, like, this is a forensic analysis, because it's like, it looks like it's fog or something. So maybe it is, I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like the water tower would have to be further away. So maybe it's where like the top of the tower is, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
So Peter Beck, if you're watching us, please like clarify this picture more. We don't know what we're looking at, but good point.
Yeah, I'm not smart enough.
Yeah, we get the point. But yeah, they added 3 structures in front of the water tower. I guess these 3 here, or this 1, 2, 3. Okay, now we don't even know what Francisco is talking about. We're just getting more and more lost here.
Yeah, because I'm gonna post it in the chat. This is from Wallops, so right down the road. This can I not? Is there no URL?
If you want, you can share it also.
Yeah, I'll share. Because it's literally like, I think you can see it in this picture where the white tower is.
Yeah, so
like it looks like it's right, but so I'm surprised. I would assume that the White Tower, just to be clear, of the launch pad would be further away. But I guess maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the launch towers maybe they can be closer. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is that clearing right behind the black tower.
Yeah. Whiskey 911 says it good. The takeaway is that they're building the launch pad for Neutron, and that's all that really matters. Exactly. That's the point that we got. Well, all right. That was all the Rocket Lab news for this week. There is two other news that, I mean, one, we talked about this a little bit, but Astra basically closed the going private deal with investors. Do you think that they have a chance of making it with their Rocket 4.0 and regaining the trust? And I mean, again, kudos for Chris Camp, because this was not undercover footage. Like, he allowed this documentary to air live on air, and he was very transparent about the situation. So I'm not sure I would have allowed this to air. Yeah, but do you think that they can come back from this?
I don't know. I mean, maybe you can find somebody to give him 100 million, but I would find that hard to believe. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, again, for me, the biggest thing is that it's like they had a rocket that worked, and then they kept failing after. And it's like, how do you prove that? Because for them, it's not getting to orbit. It's like somehow their reliability and the engineering inside and their own quality checks inside, that's the one that is lagging behind. And theoretically, it should be easy to fix, because, I mean, getting to orbit is hard. I mean, they're one of 4 companies or something that have ever been to orbit, and I don't know, like 5 governments. So it's not a small feat that they accomplished. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, we will see. Here's the next one. I was very surprised and not surprised by this one. So the Firefly CEO, the one that says that they would be cash flow positive next year, I don't understand how, is fired for allegedly having an inappropriate relationship with a coworker and having a toxic work culture. Firefly is a competitor to Rocket Lab, and unlike Astra, they are still in the game, and they do have ties to Lockheed Martin, and I think they have a good. I mean, they just launched. What is it? A few weeks ago, successful launch. So they are valid competition. So what do you think is going to happen to them without a CEO? And were you surprised to see this?
Surprised, yes, but I mean, I think that's just the industry. I mean, I hate to say the speculation, of whether or not it was actual misconduct or if they're using it as a scapegoat. Hopefully, there was no misconduct, and if there was, hopefully, it was well reported to the board. And maybe it wasn't, and that's what the conflict of interest was here, and why they were let go early. But I find it very interesting that most of the time when companies aren't going well, they end up having some sort of thing to kind of pin on the CEO to get them to step down, unfortunately. So, but as long as everybody's consensual, I guess, is all that matters, and hopefully nobody was hurt. I don't know.
But wasn't he a newer CEO?
Yeah. So I don't know. It's just, I don't necessarily know much about it. I just continue to see a little bit more about, I don't know. They, like you said, they did have a successful launch recently. I think Firefly seems to still be one of those companies that's a little bit more show than go. I'd like to see them. I understand there's the piece about marketing, but at the same time, there's a piece about just actually getting the work done. And I feel like so many companies are the opposite of Rocket Lab when it comes to marketing. They're more so about showing off and doing that, just marketing, versus actually getting the work done. So I don't know. I often think about this as well. Like, at what point do you lose the technical know-how and capability and just end up becoming a salesman or like a strategist rather than actually somebody that can? And there is a piece of that too, right? You need strategy, right? And Adam has done a phenomenal job with that with Peter to change how the organization has been run since the SPAC, right? Getting all that money, and instead of just being a launch company, bolting on some of these other opportunities to make it a true end-to-end space company. So you do need strategy and you do need planning more than just say technical know-how. But at the same time, I feel like you have to know how to get things down, or in this case, up in the air. And I don't know, it seems like sometimes with some of these CEOs that people hire, it's like some Silicon Valley like figurehead almost, and they just get put there just because they were in the right place at the right time, not because they actually have the technical know-how.
Yeah. Or for some reason the board liked what they, I don't know, likes them somehow. But because I think we talked about this on a few Rocket Lab weeklies ago when he said that they're going to be cash flow positive in 2025 with 6 launches. I don't know, 2 like they're developing 2 vehicles at the same time, like a lunar lander and the middle class, like the Falcon 9 competitor,
and a European space base.
Yeah. And when he said that, I was just like, this guy's like, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I'm like, how? Like, Rocket Lab is basically showing that you need to pivot away from launch and have a successful space systems operation, even to have a chance at making it cash flow positive. And like Adam Spice is saying, that Neutron has to finish being developed so that we can be adjusted EBITDA positive. And then this guy just casually like, yeah, we're going to be, and it's not, and even the way he said it, it's not like we have a shot at, or it looks good that we might be. It's like, no, we're gonna be cash flow positive. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that really irked me. Yeah, I
didn't see it. Yeah, and I'm curious to see the progress on their lunar lander, because those Artemis missions are starting to come up, right? And I know Rocket Lab's supposed to help contribute to the lunar lander piece.
Yeah.
I'm very curious to see, because that obviously has revenue that Rocket Lab's supposed to be a part of. But it could mean, in that case, benefits, for Rocket Lab going in the future. I mean, I don't really foresee Rocket Lab designing lunar landers, but who's to say they're out of the running, right? I mean, who knows? I mean, after Neutron's accomplished, I feel like there's going to be some large announcement of what's next for the organization. It's generally what happens, or there's maybe after Neutron is launched, they have the new acquisition, or maybe they announce the acquisition, this quarter. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely exciting. Earnings coming up, I think, in 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. Very much looking forward to it. I mean, I think that this Q2 they will have like blown it out of the park, but I'm like worried about the guidance, because if we come in with soft guidance, that's not going to look that good. Maybe it will break the momentum. I don't know. Hope not. Cool. Sorry?
It might be tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe the space systems will help offset. I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, so far the space system has offset what they missed on the rocket launches, right? Yeah. But if they come in with like 3 planned launches this quarter, that's not going to look very pretty, unless there is some explanation that this, like, we're planning to launch 8 in Q4, but still, yeah. Anyways, we're going to see.
I think the only saving grace would be is if they were to have a multitude of haste launches, but I know the Department of Defense haste launches don't start until 2025, and then there's supposed to be 2 different customers for haste launches this year. But yeah, I mean, I'm not. Yeah. Anyway, I think I think Peter said this when we had him on the channel. Getting away from partner dependence for your revenue would be very helpful, because at the moment it's the partners, unfortunately, that are continuing to drag the revenue performance for the organization.
Yeah. Cool. That was all the news that I had prepared for this show. So I want to see if the audience maybe has some questions that they want us to answer, and then we will wrap it up for today.
Are you selling any more puts, Mr. Vince?
I sold puts on Tesla, actually, that I'm actually willing to buy. I'm doing wheeling the right way. I got my I learned, let's put it this way. So yeah, if I get assigned those shares, then I will just be selling calls on it and hope that it gets called away. I don't think that Tesla would be going down back to 200 or even below 200. So I feel pretty safe with that choice.
Yeah.
I need to be more like you and be able to add a lot more money to the account.
Well, you do have a lot of kids, so that's tough in that respect. But yeah, consistent income is very helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the kids; it's that my real estate business is having a tough time. But hopefully, like if my real estate business would be going normal, then I could contribute, 6 figures per year to the broker account. So yeah. But now we are having our own. It's not Bidenomics here, but it's something else that is similar. Inflation, high interest rates.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to interest rates coming down. I mean, they're even down. I think the mortgage I have on this one is 7 3/4 or something like. No, not 3/4. 7.375. So just under 7.5%. So we're at a lot of the places I've seen, or some of the places are like 6.5, 6.6. So I'm hoping to get it down closer to 6, and then maybe I'll wait towards the end of the year and see how interest rates perform. But my hope is to get a couple $100 shaved off of this house a month. And once that happens, I feel like I could rent it for cash flow positive. Right now, I don't think I'd be able to get the rent because I only put down 10%. And that was a cautious choice. I mean, I thought, not a cautious choice, a conscious choice, because I thought interest rates would come back down and I would be able to refinance it and eventually get into the realm of it being cash flow positive to rent. So hope is that we'll be able to do that, and any bonus that I get at the end of the year would hopefully come in handy with potentially getting me closer to 20% down. So then hopefully then I can focus on finding the more of like a forever home for me.
Yeah. I don't believe in that concept. It changes all the time. You know, I like the place that I live here. I thought this would be my forever home. And then I got 2 more kids, or like one is on the way and one is 8 months old. And it's so small. It's so freaking small. And yeah, there's not, like, Sweden does not have a lot of big houses. So I'm having a little conundrum on how to, it's, I think between square feet and square meters, it's a 10x, I think, if you want to. Yeah. So like this house or apartment that I live in is on the ground floor. It's 1,800 square feet. Is that like, do you have, because I think it's like an okay size for like a normal family, right?
Mm-hmm.
But do you have a lot of houses? Because this is like quite big in Sweden. Like it's hard to, like, there's not a lot that is bigger than this. And
yeah, I'd say the average house in the U.S. is probably 1,500 to 2,000 square feet.
you see,
Three
like,
bed, two bath. Like my house
yeah,
is 1,550 square feet,
yeah,
which is quite small, I would say.
yeah.
Um, but it's still 3 bedroom, 2.5 bath. Yeah.
My dream right now would be to find something that is 5,000 square feet, with garage and many rooms, so I can have a YouTube studio. All the kids can have their own rooms, and my mother-in-law lives with us, and she helps with
Mhm.
the kids a lot. And then if the kids could have their own living room, and me and my wife could have our own living room, it's like I I acknowledge I'm dreaming, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying if
Yeah.
there was a house like that, I would be very happy to.
The next one for
Yeah.
me needs a bedroom on the first floor. So, because my mom's getting a little older, and if I ever have anybody else sleep over, I'd like to have them, sleeping on the first floor, just so they don't have to be climbing up and down stairs. Especially with young kids as well, right? Like if I ever plan to have kids, or I don't want to have to be carrying them up and down stairs, so it'd be nice to have, you know, younger kids on the first floor, if possible. And then also having a pool would be kind of cool here in Houston.
Yeah.
So there's a few places, but I don't know. I often wonder, because I think I've shared with you how large the portfolio is at this point. I'm 33. I'm like, should I take a little bit of money off the table, buy myself a nicer place, live life a little bit better, than I'm currently. I can't complain. My life is great, right? But it's like, could I use 100, 200 grand to buy a slightly nicer house? And, anyway, I think about
Well,
that.
it's funny because I can only tell you what I would do in your situation, but it's like whatever you choose, you're going to be fine. I know your portfolio, and it's like
Yeah.
that's what's so nice with you. It's like whichever way you go, you're going to be amazing still. Obviously, I think if you don't touch the money, you will be more amazing later.
That's the
And
thing. Yeah.
and again, if you were my brother or something, I would say that like I don't feel a house has you like for me it's like every time I got a new house it was like very exciting like the first 1 to 2 months, and then it just became a house. Like especially if you don't have a wife and kids, it has no utility. It's just
Mm-hmm.
you have to clean it, take care of it, and yeah. So I wouldn't do anything until there is a woman in the picture, and yeah,
It's a
then
good point. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have so many sticks in the fire at this point, and I'm 2, 3 years away from some of these things really blowing the top off, right? Like SoFi, Palantir, Rocket Lab being the big one. I think that's going to blow the top off. But even Palantir, I mean, that could double from now, and
it could
within the
double
next
this
few
year,
years.
according to Mr. Dan Ives.
Yeah, according to Dan Ives, it's going to double this year. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm kind of curious, and if that's the case, then I'll have a couple more pockets of change, and it's kind of like I don't know, that continued delayed gratification. But at what point is it too late to delay
Yeah,
the gratification? You actually enjoy yourself,
yeah.
and part of me is like, I don't know, 33 is pretty dope to have like a sick house with a pool, and having a house that most people would admire to have in their 40s and 50s, and you have it in your 30s. But you're right. I mean, after having the pool and like being able to have the pool and that piece, like what am I actually doing it for? And I think it'd probably just be an ego stroke,
I knowing myself, I'm like the first week amazing. Then the first time I need to clean the pool, it would be like, what the F am I doing? And then after having cleaned the pool like 3-4 times, I'm like, how can I get rid of this?
I'd be
That's
paying
what
somebody, man. I mean, because it was we were in Houston, or sorry, not Houston, at the Airbnb. We pay somebody, I forget how much a week, to come and look at it, and do all the chemicals and vacuum and stuff like that. And if I could get the same cost and everything, then I would probably do it, because it'd probably be more close to year round. But at the same time, it's like I wouldn't have them do it every week. I'd probably do it every other week, and then I would just check chemicals like the weeks that they don't come, and if I need to throw a little bit of chlorine or something like that, then I would. But anyway.
Cool. We got some questions. Sorry, audience. We were just chit-chatting away here. We did get some questions. Do you think if Trump was assassinated, the stock market would have significantly went down? I'm 100%. And we would have a civil war. I'm not American, so I leave that question to you.
I don't know. I was pretty shaken up by the whole thing. Unfortunately, I had, with the political turmoil that's been going on in the United States over the past several years, I've honestly thought, why hasn't there been an assassination attempt? Not that I want it, right? But with the turmoil and the craziness that has been going on, I'm surprised that it's taken this long to see something on either side. Right? True. So it's been kind of nuts over the past few years. So, but I agree. I think there would have been much larger fallout had there been something that actually occurred out of it.
Yeah. I imagine you working for an oil company. You must be a very big Democrat.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, it's we definitely have discussion because it is very political, right? I mean, you get the restrictions that generally come in when a Democratic administration is in, but that's the thing. It's a global business, right? So even if it might have some sort of restriction in the United States, in other areas of the world, are you as restricted? And it really just depends on the government and the administration in there at the time. So I don't want to get too involved in global politics, but yeah, there's certain countries that are easier to operate in than others. That's for sure.
I must say, like I'm not American, but that picture when Trump like lifts his hand and has the flag, I mean, it moves me, like, because like I feel the West is like we're not one country, but it's like somehow we're on one side, right? And then like especially in the West, it's like, yeah, if the US is winning, we're winning, and everybody's winning. And yeah, when I saw that picture, I was like, damn, that's cool,
Yeah.
I had some other words in mind that are not family friendly, but
yeah, it definitely it gets you. At the end of the day, I'm a patriot at heart, and I want what's best for the country. And photos like that, I mean, that photo is going to be shared in history books for God knows how long, probably until 100 years from now, when things are so different that but it's crazy. I was not expecting it, and it took up my entire evening. Like, I kept watching it. I was watching the news. I was trying to understand what the hell was going on. It was kind of like when 9/11 happened, when the towers in Manhattan were destroyed. I spent the whole afternoon. I was 10 or 11 at the time, and I spent the whole afternoon like watching the news. Like, I was much more in awe because I was 10 or 11. I didn't really know what the hell was going on, but it felt kind of the same. It was kind of just like, why would you attack someone else, right? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay, here's another question. Do you think the tech stocks will keep sinking next week? It's very hard to predict what the market is going to do short term. I think this pullback was due, and my personal opinion that this was a pullback, and we're going to get back to the bull market. Matt?
My thoughts? A lot of companies were running really hot, and like Google and Amazon specifically. And so, I mean, I felt like even if Google or Amazon had met expectations with where they were priced, they would have, even if they met the expectations, which are very high, by the way, I would like to note, the market and analysts are expecting a lot in terms of year-over-year growth and everything for a lot of these companies. And I'm mostly focusing on Amazon and Google. Okay. I don't really look at too much like of the Teslas and stuff like that, but Tesla already reported did they already report their earnings? They just only reported the
tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Or I mean, Monday.
Yeah. So from an Amazon and Google perspective, they're expecting a lot. And had they kind of even just met, I felt like the stock would have been down 10 or 15%. Now I still feel like Even if they meet, they'll probably have a 5% sell off, but it won't be 5 to or like 10 to 15 like it would have been.
That's where Palantir is right now. Like if they meet expectations, they will like dunk 20%.
Yeah. No, I still feel like I think Palantir, if it meets expectations and it's a 20% year-over-year growth, then I think
it will be.
what are we at? We're at 28.50. So let's just say $5. So yeah, you'll be back at $24.
Yeah, I think so too. But yeah, I do think that we're going to go back to a bullish market, both on Rocket Lab and on Palantir, my two main stocks, and I believe the rest of the stock market.
But in what time horizon? Like the rest of the year or the next month?
Yeah, I think so. The rest of the year.
I think the ground is going to shift a little bit underneath our feet as we get closer to these rate cuts, and some of the data I think is really going to be unfavorable. I think, especially if it's a Biden economy, I think you might be able to look past it if it's a Trump economy, and not to say that the data would be better, right? It's just that anticipation of a Trump economy with 15% corporate tax, some of the other things that he's going to put into place that would help, kind of numb any sort of real data that's coming out. But if you do have a Biden presidency, I think, in November, the latter half of the year in November and December, going into 2025, I think a lot of that data that will be showing up, which I believe will be negative as we start cutting interest rates in the latter half of the year, I think will have a slight drag on the performance of the stock market. So I think it just really depends. Like temporarily, I think the data is going to be the data. I think we'll see a 5% pullback. You will be in this range here. I don't think we'll be rushing towards all-time highs, but I've been humbled before and I'll be humbled again in terms of what actually happens. But I think if you see a Trump presidency, you'll definitely have a great Christmas rally for sure, with people being numb to the data, knowing that it's likely to be some quick rate cuts, or not quick rate cuts, quick tax cuts that'll add to the bottom line, which obviously you magically show 7 to 15% additional net income, then magically your valuations can jump by something pretty similar, right? So
yeah. Next question. Do you think the hot fire is fully priced in to the stock? My answer on this is I have no idea what the hot fire is going to do to the stock price, because normally Wall Street likes to front run things. And for example, like if they know that the interest rate cuts are coming, like the market starts to rally, like when it looks like it's pretty sure that they're coming, and not at the announcements. This is like, the buy the rumor, sell the news. So in my head, the successful hot fire means that there is going to come neutron contracts, but they haven't had any contracts on neutron, right? So is Wall Street going to front run the neutron contracts, or Wall Street wants to wait and see that we don't know? Because technically the official stance of Wall Street is we don't know if they're even going to sell one neutron, and every earnings call they're asking them, like, how do you know there is demand? Why haven't you sold anything? So maybe they wait, and there is going to be an insane rally when the first neutron contract is announced. And I think that that's the more likely scenario, but I would not be surprised if the hot fire test comes and then we see a very, very nice rally in anticipation of contracts coming.
I think you're right, Vince. I think there's a lot of dependencies that are upon each other, right? You have the Archimedes being successful in its hot fire testing, and then you have tank 2 testing, and then you have to put the whole thing, and then you have a wet rehearsal, and then you got the contracts that actually come from it, and all that dependent upon what happens next with Archimedes. So am I going to be a dummy and say, do I not think there's going to be a 5 to 10% rally, a day or a week or so after the hot fire test? I think that there's a possibility. There's also a possibility that it stays the same, and people are waiting for the real big news, which is neutron contracts, like Vince said. So I think they're all dependent upon each other. I think the way I look at it is if it jumps to say $6 tomorrow versus $6 before the end of the year, it doesn't matter to me, right? Because at the end of the day, this is me, right? So you could listen to this and say Matt's full of shit and you're justified in your opinion, but to me the hot fire test is more of a lessening of capital exposure risk because you're over that hump. To me, the big catalyst is when we actually get the stick in the air and can prove that you have a successful medium launch vehicle. And that's when the real race begins, right? We already know we're number 2 compared to SpaceX. I say we as a collective, as a community. But at the end of the day, it's like I feel like the Neutron getting into space and then also landing will probably be the largest catalyst to the stock, and that matters more to me, than let's just say the hot fire test. I feel like the hot fire is inevitable. What happens with that, but I think that's small compared to what's actually to come after. The dependencies that come after the hot fire test are more what really is going to jump the stock price. So I don't think you're going to be expecting a $15 price target. And hell, I would love to be humbled, right? And say, yeah, it's going to go to $15 after the hot fire test. I don't think that's what it is. I think what it is the actual launching of the vehicle and actually getting it into space and getting successful contracts. And that would be what gets you to $15. And that's where I'll see my net worth go up pretty substantially.
We will all.
$6, I agree. $6, I agree. Right. I see a 5 to 10%. I think, that'll get us back to $6.
Yeah. Cool. I think we answered all the questions that were there, or at least touched on the questions. So I think we can call it a day. Thanks for everybody for being here. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for inviting me again. It's always fun.
Yeah. And see you everyone next week.
Yes, It'll be fun. Talk soon.
Yeah.